We are pleased to present today's webinar. Here's the agenda: Leveling the Playing Field, Building Equality and Inclusion with Sport. I'm delighted to welcome today's guests who join us virtually from the cities of Greenwich in the UK and Montreal in Canada to present good practices that use the power of sport and games to cultivate cross-cultural understanding, empathy, equality, and fair play. Joining us today from Equitas in Montreal are Ruth Morrison, Senior Program Officer, and Amy Cooper, Education Specialist. Joining Montreal is Dr. Michael Siraj, Program Manager at the Charlton Athletic Race and Equality Partnership, better known as CARE, from Greenwich, UK, just outside of London. Their presentations will be followed by a Q&A period, and we look forward to your questions. So as we learn about their strategies and successes, I encourage all of you to imagine how today's good ideas might be adapted in your own city. Now please join me in welcoming our first presenters from Montreal, Canada. We invite Ruth Morrison and Amy Cooper to share their experiences from the Play It Fair program. Hi Ruth, hi Amy, the podium.
Hello, we're very happy to be with you this morning. As Kim said, my name is Ruth Morrison, and I'm one of the program officers for Canada.
And I'm Amy Cooper, and I'm an education specialist at Equitas.
We're joining, Equitas is the International Center for Human Rights Education, and our innovative programs equip organizations and the communities they serve to build a global culture of human rights. As also Kim mentioned, we are located in Montreal, in Quebec, in Canada. Montreal, first of all, is quite cold at the moment. It's also one of the biggest cities in the province of Quebec. We have almost a population of 4 million people. It is also quite diverse. At the base, it's a bilingual city, and there are also many other languages spoken, as we have a large percentage of the population who are immigrants to Quebec. It's also quite a young population, with more than 25% under the age of 30. So we're here today to speak to you about Play It Fair. Play It Fair is a program that we have that we run with municipal agencies, community-based organizations, and schools with their educators that work with 6 to 12-year-olds. And it's a program that helps them promote human rights, non-discrimination, and respect for diversity in their programming with children. The important program components are an educational toolkit, training. There's always an ongoing partnership and collaboration with Equitas, through which we're able to provide follow-up and support, a significant evaluation, and we also help coordinate special events with our partners all across Canada.
Hi, it's Amy. And we thought we'd take a minute just to talk about the educational approach of the toolkit and the program, because we feel that it's such an important part of what makes Play It Fair a success across communities in Canada and in the world. So at its base, it's really about promoting values through play. The Play It Fair, through training, we train frontline workers who work with children to incorporate positive values in their game settings. And those games provide concrete experiences for the kids to experience values such as inclusion, tolerance, cooperation, acceptance, respect for diversity. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with the game musical chairs, but as you know, you play music, the music stops. If you don't get a seat, you're excluded from the game. In our version, we sort of do a twist and we say that the object of the game isn't to be excluded, but it's to cooperate together and to include all the children in the activity. So when the music stops, a chair is removed, but now all the kids have to work together to figure out how everybody can sit down. That game is then followed up by a group discussion, and we train frontline staff to ask children questions about how they feel, what they think, and how they can act in their daily lives as a result. So for example, did you like the game? What did it feel like to cooperate? How did you cooperate together? And how can we cooperate, not just in the game, but in our daily lives, in order to reinforce these positive behaviors? So the positive behaviors and the positive values. In the toolkit as base, we now have 81 activities, as well as 26 reference sheets. And those reference sheets are for frontline staff and organizations to learn more about human rights, children's rights, as well as how to facilitate and lead group discussions. So as Ruth mentioned, we do extensive evaluation, and we've done we've been fortunate to do evaluation thanks to our funders across the country that allow us to look at the changes amongst staff, that look the changes amongst children, as well as the changes amongst participating organizations. And if we think about the benefits of newcomer communities and the host communities, often in our setting, we're looking at a mix of both. So that the children and staff are both, in many cases, are both newcomers or host populations. And what we see is that the underlying approach and the activities really enable children and the staff and the organizations to identify patterns, find commonalities, and celebrate diversity. So, for example, changes among staff, they see themselves as role models, they have stronger relationships with children as well as amongst themselves, they have new resources for conducting activities with children, and they're better at promoting children's rights. Similar changes are amongst children. There's less conflict, they're more sensitive to acceptance, inclusion, respect for diversity, and they have a better understanding of their rights and responsibilities. In terms of participating organizations, the participatory approach and human rights values are integrated into their programming. They have intentional programming for promoting their values, and these have sort of had ripple effects not only within the organization in terms of hiring practices and staff policies, but also in terms of how they perceive themselves in promoting children's rights in the broader community.
Hi, it's Ruth again. I'd like to speak a little bit to the role of the leadership of Montreal. The partnership with Montreal really began to be more concrete in 2004, and this was a very fertile time for Montreal for promoting children's rights as we were going through a merger-demerger process which merged 27 surrounding municipalities on the islands of Montreal. This process it made for the fact that it was the first time that there was a coordinated, though quite complex body organizing children's programming all across the different boroughs on the island of Montreal. The City of Montreal was also going through a participatory consultation to create the Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, which was the first of its kind for a Canadian city. So in this context, Montreal actually approached Equitas, knowing the work that we did internationally, wanting a concrete tool that they could use to promote respect for diversity in the populations of the summer camps that they saw as more and more diverse. This relationship with Montreal has provided access, visibility, and credibility, which goes both ways. The credibility of the process with Montreal enabled us to replicate the program in different communities across Canada. We are now located in 21 communities across Canada with we reach an average of 80,000 children per year, and we have more than 400 community-based organizations, schools, and different municipalities themselves. A lot of those community-based organizations are immigrant-serving organizations as well. Playfair has also been replicated and is being used in Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Haiti, and Indonesia.
Hi, it's Amy again. So we were asked to reflect on what makes Playfair easy to replicate, what makes it work. And these are some of our initial conclusions. One is that it's easy to use. The toolkit is easy to use. The training is easy to use. We've designed a training that begins with Equitas, but we provide manuals, for example, for participating organizations to train their own staff. It's designed to complement existing programming rather than replace it. So no organization is starting from scratch. If you have a children's programming, then this will help make your programming more intentional in terms of promoting values and complement what you already have. It's inclusive and participatory. So through our partnership with the City of Montreal and other municipalities, since we've been able to do extensive needs assessments that make make Playfair really take root in a community because our partners see the relevance because they were part of that extensive needs assessment. But also the activities are flexible, they're diverse, and they encourage participation of everybody regardless of ability. Some activities are more active, less active, and they can be adapted to different contexts. It's budget friendly, which is always great. It's not expensive. The only costs are training and the toolkits, which we print, but also we should add that are also available online and for free. And we encourage partners to really adapt the toolkit based on the approach, keep the approach, but adapt the games and make them relevant to your context. And another important resource, obviously, is the staff time to make it work. An additional reflection is that staff can really see the changes and they see tangible results. Not only with the kids, but based on their feedback, they see Equitas making amendments. And that's because of our continued support with our partner organizations. In terms of our learning takeaways, we feel that there are 5 main takeaways. One is that there really needs to be a home for play at Fair. So are there structures such as day camps, after-school programming already in place in your municipality? There needs to be a strong link to the mission and values of our partner organizations and your institutions. So do your mission and values match the program mission and values in terms of promoting positive values of human rights, inclusion, tolerance, etc.? Training and follow-up are integral to the success of the program, and they've enabled Play It Fair to remain dynamic. So are your staff willing to be trained? Are there trainers already in place? The resources to maintain the programming are really time and motivation, and we know that there's a champion effect. So if there's one person on board who's really for the program can do amazing things in the organization or in the institution. And most importantly, we notice the strength of the participatory approach for social change. So it really ensures that the needs and interests and experiences of you, our partner organizations, and you, the users, remain at the center of the program, and that the children remain at the center of the program. Play It Fair is one of many programs at Equitas, all aimed at building a global culture of human rights. And so through the participatory approach, children, youth, and community members are actively engaged in building this culture by critically thinking about how the values of human rights are demonstrated within their communities. So I hope we didn't rush through it too much, but that was our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you very much, both Ruth and Amy, for sharing an excellent and very well-traveled good idea. That map of Canada was wonderful. So quickly, from one city to the next, we now shift to Greenwich, in the United Kingdom. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Michael Siraj, representing CARE, the Charlton Athletic Race and Equality Partnership, who joined us from the Royal Borough of Greenwich, just outside London, to share his experience with a unique partnership between a UK local authority and a professional football club. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Kim. Hello and good afternoon, as it is here in London. My name is Michael Siraj, and I'm the Programme Manager for the Charlton Athletic Race and Equality Partnership. We are based here in London. We're one of the 33 London boroughs. If you move from the map of Great Britain to the right, that shows a breakdown of the different boroughs within London. And as you can see, the Royal Borough of Greenwich is based in the southeast of London. What I've got here now is a brief snapshot of the population profile of the Royal Borough of Greenwich. According to the last census, that's 2011, the total population is around just over 250,000. And that represents an increase, nearly a 20% increase, since the last census data was published in 2001. So that's quite a significant increase in population size. Now, key headline figures from that data: there has been a significant increase in 0 to 4-year-olds. but also a significant increase in the diversity of different ethnic groups that make up the borough. And as you can see there from the data, there's been quite a significant increase. The terms here, the ethnic categories, other Asian, other black, are the categories that the census, the Office of National Statistics here in the UK use to define different groups. So they're the categories that are used in gathering the different statistical data. But in relation to Greenwich, as you can see, there's quite a significant change in the profile of the population. Now, the CARE partnership, the Chiltern Athletic Race and Equality Partnership, it's quite a unique partnership in as much as it's led by a local authority, a local government, i.e. the Royal Borough of Greenwich, and a professional soccer football club, Chiltern Athletic. It is the only partnership of its kind in Europe with a dedicated remit to promote equality, diversity and inclusion through sport and arts. We work with a very diverse range of partners, ranging from local faith groups to voluntary sector organisations to private sector agencies and public sector organisations. Now, we define ourselves, CARE define themselves as having three key characteristics. We are this unique partnership made up of a range of different stakeholders, including the high-profile football club. Now, we use sport and art as a vehicle to engage with local groups, and more recently we've been using new social media and digital technology. The third key dimension to our work focuses on the fact that we target disadvantaged communities and underrepresented groups. That is a specific remit of the organisation. Now, we have quite a broad programme of work ranging from digital photography, film production, radio production, but key to our work are a diverse range of different sports activities, including soccer, that we use to engage with local community groups. And what I'm going to do here is focus on our sports programme and look at how we use sport and develop a programme to engage with different sections of the community. So I'm going to start by looking at the data relating to our target groups. Essentially what we do here is look at need. We're looking at the need of the different groups in the community. Now, what we found is that a number of different groups were inactive in sport. So, for example, groups and local people with disabilities had around 79% inactivity, so they did not participate very highly in various sports activities. Local minority ethnic groups, nearly 60%, were inactive within different sports activities locally within Greenwich. So what we did here, we consulted with our partners and used the hard quantitative data to then develop a targeted programme in the community that was accessible, affordable and relevant to different cultures. So one of the recent programmes we delivered, we set very clear targets in relation to engaging with the different groups. We focused specifically on these particular groups and then worked with our diverse range of partners who already have established links with groups that we were targeting. So, for example, we would work with a local disability organisation who have a wide range of users. So using our very broad partnership, we were able to engage specifically with the target community. Now, one of the key components of all of the programs that we deliver, including the sports program, really integral to our work, is measuring how well or how well we're not, in that particular case, how well we're doing. So inbuilt into all of our programs, we have a monitoring and evaluation system that measures against key targets within the program. So we have a range of different methods to collect data. And we do that to track our progress, to see how well we're doing. Are we meeting the objectives of the program? Are we hitting our targets? If we're not, and there are cases when we're not, if there's any slippage within the program, then we need to intervene and adjust the program, consult again with our partners, and adjust the type of work and the type of project that we're delivering, but always in consultation with our key partners. So some of the methods we use to collect data, we use monitoring information, questionnaires and surveys, and for qualitative data focus groups. Now this type of statistical information allows us to track our performance, but it also is crucial in providing evidence to our funders. So we can go back to our funders and say, look, this is what we're doing, this is the impact that this type of project is having. So moving on, there's a few of the findings here, and an example of some of the findings from our last sports program relating to building equality and inclusion through sport. So, for example, some of the feedback we had 82% of the participants had a better understanding of people in their local community. 75% of the participants understood more about their own identity as a citizen of Greenwich, and 3/4 of the participants felt more confident within a multicultural group of people. Okay, what I'm doing here now, I'm looking ahead. I'm trying to look at the future and see how the impact that current legislation, current changes in policy, the current economic downturn, what type of effect that's having on our type of work. So the boom years of 1998 to 2008 now have essentially broken down. There's a global economic crisis that is spreading across the globe, including Europe. There's a continued and lengthy period of low growth and economic uncertainty. There are a number of geopolitical factors, and what we mean by that are the different areas around the globe, different countries, and the different development processes that different countries are in. So that's a global context. From a national context, coming down one step, here in the UK we have an austerity programme that's having a big impact on local government and our work. We had a 28% cut in funding to the public sector in 2008, with a further 2% added at the end of last year. And that's a significant change in funding to the public sector. In addition to that, there's a number of demographic changes. For example, in 2007, Bulgaria and Romania joined the European Union. There were a number of controls on immigration to members from these countries that expire in 2014, which potentially could have an impact in terms of different migratory patterns. Now, from a local perspective, local authorities are currently undergoing an unprecedented period of change. The scale of the cuts I mentioned, plus national policy developments, and these long-term demographic trends all require local government to really reconsider their role in the local area and the way in which they have delivered services. There's an increase in demand for services, which is rising against the backdrop of shrinking resources. And this essentially is changing and shifting the relationship between the state, local governments, and the citizen, the community, which is essentially an inevitable part of long-term change. The shrinking budgets means councils no longer can deliver the range of services they sort of have previously provided. The scarce resources, the increase in demand, this necessitates, this is what is essential now then to this, is that the community and local authorities collaborate more to find a way of delivering services more efficiently and more responsively. So looking at the care model, I should just say one of the key questions then, looking ahead to the future, really is how are we going to increase efficiencies whilst maintaining quality standards in service delivery against a backdrop of these shrinking budgets with funding pressures and increasing demands, which is a key question as to how local governments and projects like ours will operate in the future. So the key features to the care model of working focuses really heavily on our partnership work, on delivering a program of work that is based on evidence and that is targeted, and thirdly, the integral participation and involvement of the local community. What I want to finish off by doing is just looking very quickly at the benefits of partnership working and why we place so much emphasis on working with a diverse range of partners. Partnership is acknowledged now in the UK as a central feature of all current policy initiatives. It's recognised as a key vehicle for delivering a very diverse range of public and social services. It's seen as a way of widening participation and engagement. Essentially what it does, or can do, is stimulate and support community engagement and increase reach. Secondly, in the ever-changing political, institutional and organisational environment, partnerships and partnership arrangements can provide bridges between different sectors. They can provide bridges across the public, private, voluntary and community sectors, between different service providers and between different social partners. Essentially, by working with other organisations, partnerships can connect with far more people. Thirdly, partnerships can also form part of a collaborative network where knowledge, expertise, skills, information and resources can all be pulled together in order to deliver better and more effective and efficient outcomes that could be delivered by the individually alone. What we would call, in essence, efficiencies of scale. And finally, the fourth key dimension and benefit of partnership working focuses on the ability of partnerships to be able to address multiple forms of inequality, exclusion and discrimination, and that organisations and agencies and groups can work together collaboratively to develop innovative solutions that are really important to tackle long-term persistent problems that in the current climate are likely to last a considerable time. So that really draws to a conclusion, I think that's 10, my presentation. If anybody wants any further information or I hadn't covered anything, please feel free to contact me. My details are there. Thank you very much for listening, and that's back to you, Kim. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Michael, for showing us, for an excellent presentation and for helping us think about the power of successful partnerships, what they can achieve and what they have achieved and what potential they have to achieve when local governments work together with community actors. It's been a very interesting session. I hope you've all learned as much as we have from these innovative and practical ideas. And you know what we say? We say good ideas travel. So you'll notice that there's a new poll on the screen. Let us know, using the poll, if you would adopt today's good ideas in your own city. And you can cast your vote anytime before the session ends. So we've now concluded the formal presentation part of our webinar, and it's time for our Q&A. I'd like you to continue to submit questions into the Q&A box while we move to our first question, which what I'd like to do, Michael, Amy, Ruth, is talk a little more about the partnerships that both your organizations enjoy with local governments. How have the partnerships come about, and what impact have they had on your community? And perhaps we'll go back to Montreal and ask Ruth.
Thank you. I think one important thing is that the need, first of all, the need was identified by the city itself. They really saw the population of the kids in their programming was changing, and they wanted a very concrete tool to be able to address different issues that they had decided that respect for diversity and non-discrimination was important, and they wanted something to concretely put that into practice in their children's programming. That certainly made buy-in and take-up easier at the beginning. The needs assessment was also key. There was a 3-year extensive needs assessment with community-based organizations and summer camps to find out what the reality was in their camps and what would be most useful to them to address their needs. I think also what's interesting is because there are so many different boroughs and sort of the complexity of how children's programming are run, one of the benefits of Playfair is that it's provided really a unifying program. Also, even the training opportunities allows people to come together and helps provide a common language to discuss these issues that they are all having sort of separately in the children's programming that they are running in the different boroughs. They also collaborate around Play It Fair Days twice a year, and that has been very beneficial, I think, also for the city. I think...
So maybe we'll actually turn the question back to Michael. I know I'd like to congratulate Michael because I know CARE has just celebrated a major milestone with a big 20th anniversary event just this past November. And the partnership, could you reflect on how the partnership came about,
Sure. That's right, Kim. We celebrated our 20th anniversary at the end of last year, so obviously we were set up in 1992. Now, CARE was set up by the local authority, by the Royal Borough of Greenwich, in partnership with Charlton Athletic Football Club in 1992. At that time, in the local area, we were experiencing quite a lot of right-wing activity at the football club. In addition to that, there were a number of high-profile, racially motivated incidents within South London. And it led, at the time, to a number of great forward-thinking people getting together and literally on the back of an envelope saying, we've got to do something about this. And CARE was born as an anti-racist organisation way back in 1992. Now, it's evolved over the years, and we embrace a far wider equality agenda. But the significance, its political significance, and the very rich, important history is a really important key dimension of CARE's work. One of the tragic incidents that took place led to the government at that time in 1993 launching a formal inquiry into a racist murder that took place locally, and that led to the publication of what's called the Macpherson Report in 1999 that ushered in an amendment to the Race Relations Act in this country, and for the first time placed a duty on all public bodies to actively promote race equality and to eliminate discrimination in the delivery of their functions. So it has a very rich and important history, and was set up by the local authority and the football club.
That's very interesting. One of the other things we're interested in is what changed in your organization and the way it works as a result of the partnership with local government. I mean, local government is generally thought of as clunky and bureaucratic, and we all know community organizations have to be nimble and effective to survive. So how is that, practically speaking, what have you learned by working with local government?
How that translates into practice and reality, there is a big bureaucracy behind local government, and for very good reasons. However, the flexibility we have as this partnership allows us to pull from both the other voluntary sector partners and private sector partners, as well as the advantages of having a very strong local authority behind the CARE partnership. So we're able to pull on resources, information. As I mentioned earlier, we in the benefits of partnership working, we have access to lots of information that enables us to develop programs that are evidence-based and underpinned by strong statistical data. So all of our programs will be based on feedback and consultation with community groups, but also feedback and consultation with our local authority partner. So it works in a very practical and sort of pragmatic way, I guess.
That's interesting. How about you, Ruth? I mean, how has your Equitas, your organization, changed as a result of the incredible work you've done with various municipal departments across Canada?
I would say that we've definitely developed a greater expertise in working with municipalities. As you mentioned, of course, there has had to be a fair amount of flexibility. The City of Montreal is sort of particular in that there are some children's programming that they run themselves. There are others that are run by the boroughs, and then there are others that are sort of outsourced to community-based organizations. And that's affected a lot sort of how we give training to the different coordinators and frontline workers. And I would say, and we work primarily through sort of the Parks and Recreation Department in the organizations. And we've learned a lot sort of in terms of buy-in to be able to do that shift from working just with the frontline workers to working also with the executive directors of the organizations as well as municipalities and political organizations.
That's great. And we're getting quite a lot of questions from our audience right now. I have one more question for both of you that maybe you can just answer quickly before we move on to our public Q&A. Promoting understanding and respect for difference is core to both the work that both your organizations do. So tell us, why is it so important to start with our youngest citizens, children? And maybe we'll ask Amy to comment.
Sure. Well, I think something that's really important to our work at Equitas and I think globally is really about building this culture of human rights and positive values. And that's something that really lives and breathes through relationships. And so the approach that we use at Playfair is engages children and those that surround children immediately in a process of critical reflection, and they learn by doing. And we see more and more that children are spending increasing time in these after-school programs and daycares, in summer camps, and we need to ensure that the important values that would I guess traditionally be promoted in the family are also promoted in the immediate spaces where children exist. So in those community centers, in schools, so that the idea of community and civic education happens on a regular basis and is integrated as they grow up.
Great. And Michael, why start with children?
I think starting with younger people is really important, in as much as it's a point at which people's character, personalities are developing, and it's an opportunity to influence and have an impact on their behaviour and their attitudes towards equality and diversity. It's also for us a way of linking with families and linking families with other services. We, as mentioned in the presentation, target disadvantaged communities. So very often they're outside of the mainstream and relatively hard to reach. So by engaging with younger people and families, we're able to, this linking social capital I mentioned earlier and this building bridges, we're able to link up various sections of the population with different services, in addition to delivering our own project work to different groups within the community.
That's very good. That's interesting. Well, we're going to move now to our to questions from our audience. I have a couple of questions that are specific to the sport and recreational context of your work. I'm going to start with a question from owner Una Tulmas, who has a question for Dr. Siraj. He asks, what is the role of the professional football club Charlton Athletic in this project? Are they contributing financially or by providing sporting space, training help, morale, etc.? Michael, perhaps you'd like to answer that question.
Sure, thanks. That's a great question. The role of the football club is crucial to the work we deliver. They have a very high profile in the local community. Now, we've delivered work on behalf of the local authority, and we've gone in as the Royal Borough of Greenwich, and we get, let's say, a take-up of 10 people. Now, as soon as we badge the activity with a professional football club, maybe we get a player to come along to open the activity. We also will include awards and prizes that are related to the football club as incentives to participation. Mm-hmm. So the football club has a key role. It also provides in-kind resources. We're based in the football club. We have an office at the back of the stadium, and they allow us access to lots of the resources that perhaps as an independent organisation, without them as a partner, we would not have access to. So it's a very crucial contribution and important role that they play within the partnership.
Great. Good. I have a question now for Amy and Ruth. I think this is a call coming in from Quebec. But thanks for sharing this program and for a very great presentation. I'd like to know if Playfair is currently lived more in a sport context or more in a recreation context. Can you expand a bit on the content of delivery of the program to kids? So perhaps Amy?
Yep. I would say in overall in general it's offered more in a recreational context, but more and more of our partners across Quebec and Canada are using it in a sports context. The 81 activities are flexible in that they're active and or less active depending on the context of the recreation, but fundamentally it's the approach that's being used in the sports context. So following up, preceding a basketball game by doing a warm-up that promotes cooperation, for example. We do have strategic partnerships, like in Greenwich. We have partnerships with the Montreal Alouettes, as well as the Montreal, which is a American football team, as well as the soccer, or the British football equivalent, which is the Montreal Impact. And we're starting to have new relationships with sports-based teams or organizations across the country. I don't know if that answers your question. I think
Oh, absolutely. That's great. And in fact, segues nicely to our next question from Laura L., who asks, what advice would you share with community recreation practitioners who are just entering the sector in terms of main challenges you face, accessing free tools like the ones that Equitas offers, etc.? Well, I think that both of you will say that supporting your initiatives with strong partnerships is part of your success story, but maybe you'd like to expand on that a little bit, and we can go back now to Michael. So what advice would you share with community recreation practitioners who are just entering the sector? How to get started?
I think you're absolutely right there. It's making links with your local authority, making links with, having a clear, if it's a new organisation with a clear set of aims and objectives, then making links with key stakeholders with a stake in that area of work. So, for example, we ensure that we work with local faith groups, we work with local disability groups, and we've made contact directly with groups who work in that area and provide services to those communities in order for us to work in parts with them to strengthen the type of work we do. So I guess linking up with groups and organisations who already work within the area that you're targeting and making strong, real links with those particular groups.
That's great. And Ruth, if you had one sort of key bit of advice for a community recreation practitioner entering the sector, what would that be?
I would say to ensure if there's a certain program that you wanted to implement, that a multi-level buy-in is really essential, that there has to be, of course, that enthusiasm with the frontline workers who are actually working directly with the children, but that it's also seen as equally important at the management level and in the higher-up administration. It also enables sustainability for the program, as sometimes there's quite a bit of turnaround on those frontline workers. So it, as Amy mentioned earlier, it really finds a home in the organization.
Okay, that's great. Well, we have a whole lot of sort of technical questions now, but from Kate Collins is very direct. She says, how are the two programs funded? So can you give us a sort of a funding 101 about with Michael? Do you want to comment?
Sure. Yeah. We receive funding from the local authority. We receive a small pot of funding for what we would call core funding, and then funding in kind from the football club. Now, the core funding from the local authority funds the care team, and part of our remit, one of our key objectives, is then to go outside to other agencies to lever in external funding from other agencies. So we have received competitively, because we have to compete for this funding, with funding proposals, funding from central government, what is called Sport England, which is the governing body for sports in England. We've received funding from the London Development Agency, which is the central London governing body. We've received funding from urban regeneration programs. So essentially, we fund a small core team that then go out and lever in external funding from other agencies.
Very good. How about you at Equitas, Amy and Ruth?
This is Ruth. So for our programs in the City of Montreal, one of the main funders is the city itself, and they have been a funder from the beginning of the program, in link with the Quebec government and in particular the Ministry of Immigrant and Cultural Communities. If we look at the program across Canada, we have we have 23 funders in all, and it's a mix of private and public.
Great. All right, well, one more question sort of related to budget issues from Fidel Mutwarazibo in Dublin. And Fidel asks, so how has the partnership in CARE helped in dealing with the budget deficits resulting from the government funding cuts? So, do you want to?
Yes, we did take a hit. So the local authority, I think it was 28% in 2008 across the board. That did impact and trickle down to us. So we had our budget cut. But essentially, what we aim to do, as I sort of mentioned earlier, is to identify external funders. So we are always looking, there's a new, we're looking at sort of what we call a social enterprise model of way of working, essentially meaning that we're trying to look at different innovative ways of raising funds to offset any cuts that we're likely to, we have taken and we will take in the future, but also to continue actively and vigorously looking for other funding from other sources. I mean, it's one of our key objectives and an ongoing target to fundraise to underpin the work we deliver.
Okay, great. Now I have an evaluation question from Michael Kerr. And Michael Kerr writes, with respect to identified target populations, does either initiative ask individuals to self-identify on the basis of ethno-racial background, the nature of their disability, gender, immigration, citizenship status, etc., to determine if disproportionate disadvantage is being positively impacted over time? I'm glad we've got an exclamation mark there. That's a big question. But Michael, maybe again, we'll ask you to handle that one.
We do. Okay, thanks. We use the categorization model that the local authority uses that's very much linked to central government. So for ethnic identification, faith, disability, it's based on the categories that are established by the local authority. However, we do adapt it to reflect our local community, and there is space to self-identify within the monitoring data, as there is always. So we have, for the purposes of a consistent approach to gathering the data, so we can analyze that data in a consistent way, categories that have been developed, but then in addition to that we have self-identification if people aren't happy to fall within one of the categories.
So thank you. So Amy and Ruth, how about in the case of Equitas, how do, for evaluation purposes, how do you use population data to weight if your programming, if at all?
It's Amy speaking. I think in terms of population data, we look at initially in our needs assessments when we've gone into new communities and approached new communities and new partnerships in those communities. But that being said, it's very general information because our relationship is really through the partner organization. So it's the information that the partner organization gathers themselves in terms of who they service in their various satellite programs or within their central organizations, and thus we serve a variety of populations across Canada, even across the city of Montreal, in that sense. And notably, one of the populations that we are, I guess, actively trying to work with is the Aboriginal population in Canada.
Okay, very good.
In order
We're
to
almost out
assure
of
that
time.
they're not being
a couple
disproportionately disadvantaged in terms of who our partners are, and they have access to the program as well.
Very good, thank you. Related to this question, we have from Naki Otsute here in Toronto. She asks, are the targets specific to the various population groups, or for the purposes of simplicity, do you aggregate targets? It's kind of a technical question. Can we get a short answer from Michael?
Yes, we can. They are specific to the various populations. So based on our needs analysis, we will set specific targets to engage with a specific group. Great.
And we're going to close with two very similar questions. Again, from Naki, we've got the question, programs that seek to encourage and celebrate inclusion often struggle with balancing the reality that life's experiences include that of winning and losing. How do your programs reconcile this and teach us how to win and lose with grace? And we have another guest who comments in a similar vein. In both programs, is there any connection made with sport values such as competition, fairness, etc., and the social values that the two programs want to promote? Sport ethics are a great way to promote social ethics. So let's go back to Equitas with the question of the issue of winning and losing. How do your programs reconcile these realities? The lesson we all need to learn about how to win and lose with grace?
It's Amy speaking. I think that's a great question. It's something that I think we all struggle with, not just as programmers and educators, but probably as parents and older siblings and people who work with children. And I think a fundamental to the Play It Fair program is really its approach in encouraging kids to talk about what's happened in a game, and encouraging those that work with children to open up those spaces and listen to the kids and what they have to say. So we don't dictate that winning or losing is, that losing is a good thing or winning is a good thing, or we need to lose with grace per se, but we open up those spaces so that kids can share how they feel, and together as a group they come to that conclusion themselves. That's really the fundamental aim of the program, and that whole critical dialogue that happens after an activity or after a sports game. We could go into lots of detail, but I think that's sort of the nutshell of what we want to.
How about you, Michael?
Sure. We use sport, particularly team sport, as a way to illustrate teamwork. We have inbuilt within our projects, our tutors and our trainers are very good and well trained, and there's an expectation that they promote teamwork within all of the activities we deliver. So we do focus on participation, on good behaviour, on the rules of the game. Here in the UK, the Football Association introduced a few years back a campaign called Respect, whereby professional footballers were encouraged to show more respect to the authorities who run the game, including linesmen, referees and other officials. Because we've often found that the behaviour of professional sportsmen and women, particularly footballers, is replicated by young people on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning or back at school. So we're acutely aware of the impact that promoting, fair play within all of the activities we deliver can have.
Well, thank you very much. We are sadly at the end of time. We'll have to keep some of the unanswered questions and share them with you at a later time. Right now, I'd like to thank both our presenters for a wonderful session and for taking questions from the audience. We like to end the Q&A with a final question. So I'd like to close by asking both of you a very short question. You can answer it in a one word or as simple as one word if you'd like. What is the one most important secret to your success? And let's go to Ruth. If you had to sum it up in one word, what would it be?
Participation.
Participation. How about you, Michael?
I've got to go, haven't I, Kim, for partnership, really, if it's one word. My apologies for being so obvious.
Well, there it is. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Our time has run out. We will send all unanswered questions to our presenters and get back to you in an upcoming newsletter. On behalf of all of our participants, I want to thank Ruth Morrison and Amy Cooper from Equitas in Montreal and Dr. Siraj from CARE in Greenwich. I'd like you all to imagine this excellent work being interpreted in your own city, adapted by your organization, or changing your neighborhoods. Before you go, please remember to cast your vote on our poll. Would you adapt these ideas in your own city? We'd like to hear your stories and share more good practices, so do please stay connected.